Hi guys, this is Peugeot 307SW from 2005 and today we're going to replace the ABS sensor. First of all, we want to jack up the car and add some security to it. And that's because we will need to remove braking assembly, and to do that our handbrake needs to be disengaged. So we want to be absolutely sure that our car is fixed in place. Next we want to remove the wheel, and I'll speed this whole process up for you because that's quite basic and I want you to focus on the part that you're interested in. Okay, now we need to approach the braking disc from the other side. This is the braking assembly. This tube here delivers braking fluid, and here you can find your handbrake wire. We want to remove the whole assembly, so first of all we want to loosen the handbrake wire and get it off the assembly. Second of all, this tube here is connected to a hose a bit higher up, and the hose is quite short. So if you don't want to disattach the supply line for braking fluid, which is recommended because it just saves time, then you want to prepare some support for the whole assembly, because it will need to be supported somewhere here if you don't want to disattach this tube. To loosen your handbrake wire, you need to go to the rear passenger seat and remove this glove box. You open it from the top, but you remove it pulling on the bottom part of it. This bolt goes to your handbrake, and these two wires go to your right and left wheel. In order to loosen them, you need to loosen the nut. So you take flat key and you start to loosen it. When this is done, you can see that the whole assembly here is loose, and now we can go back and remove the handbrake wire. Okay, so now you need to pull the handbrake wire and get it off the braking assembly. In the next step we will work on these two bolts. Now you remove both the top and the bottom bolt in the same way. So I'll explain what you need to do on the top bolt, and you need to apply it on both. So to remove this bolt, you first of all need to secure this middle section, because otherwise it will rotate together with the bolt. So you put the flat key here, and then you have some extension because of the cables here. And put it here, and you work with the key on the back and you hold this one in place so they don't both rotate. So you can start with this one just to loosen the bolt at the beginning. It can be quite tight. Now you can insert this one . So one bolt is out. Now we work on the bottom one. I figured out that you would rather see it from the bottom of the car, so that's perhaps a better angle. And that's the second bolt. Okay, so now the both bolts are out. We have our support here, and we can remove the braking assembly. You need to be patient with it. It's better to do it a bit longer than to pull this supply line together with the assembly. So you want to catch your brake pads. Next, we want to remove the support for the braking assembly, and you do that by removing 2 bolts. Yeah, you see one here, but I'll just put the camera on the other side of the braking disc, and then you'll be able to see that much clearer. Yeah, there's the other one there. Okay, I was talking about these 2 bolts. Their interface is star-shaped, size 50. Okay, so we take our Torx interface, put it on the extension, and we work on our interface. One out. I fortunately used copper paste on it, so it was still hard, but it wasn't as hard as if I haven't been using it. Okay, now for the bottom one. Okay, so you can see now that the element is moving. You see there's a lot of debris that is landing on our braking disc, so that's why at the end of this replacement we will clean the braking disc, unless you replace the braking disc, of course. Okay, so there you have the bolt, and that's the support. Now, when it comes to removing the braking disc, you need to remove this cap here. You need to find a spot and then hit it with a hammer. The same from the other side. Okay, that's how the cap looks like. And now this nut is holding the braking disc in place, and as you see, it's secured here. Let me zoom in. So you want to bend it back to the original shape of a nut in order to be able to remove it. Okay, so we take size 32 key. You need a large key for that. And we remove the nut. Okay, that's the nut. And now we can remove the braking disc. And as you see here, this is your magnetic ring. You see a small, the top here is also the magnetic ring. It's basically this ring with a face here. And your ABS sensor is pointing at this surface. And if you see real close, it has small visible lines which enables the ABS sensor to count the RPMs. And in case you see any damage on the ring, it might be the ring's fault and not the ABS sensor. So in that case, you need to replace the ring. And how you remove the ring, you basically put the screwdriver here and you hit the hammer to separate these two surfaces from each other, and you do it in different locations. It takes quite a lot of time because it's very tight fitted. I made another video on it, so you can go and check this out. I think it was my first or second video that I've ever done, so sorry for the quality. But yeah, let's go back to our job, which is replacing the ABS sensor. Now, where's the ABS sensor? You can see the tip of it here. It's behind this plate here. So if you take a look here, there's your ABS sensor. And it's very easy to remove it. You just need to undo this bolt here, or it's actually a screw. Okay, so let's go ahead and remove the ABS sensor. And hopefully the bolt haven't been here too long, so it's not rusted. Yes, that's good. I've put quite a lot of copper paste on it, I remember, so that should also be pretty good. Okay. And there's the sensor here. Now that the sensor is loose, you just need to follow the cable and remove all of these leading points. And then that one, this one, and then this point here. Okay, so to remove it, you need to put the screwdriver here and pull this pad and then push your other hand this way and it gets off. You see, that's the interface. It basically sits here. So you pull, you slide it off. Now to disconnect it, you need to pull this part up and try to separate both connections. Okay guys, so I compared the two sensors, one that I ordered to be for Peugeot 307 SW. and the previous one, the one I had originally. And these are two different sensors. You can see that the length is completely different. So what I can do, I can show you, that's the new one, that's the old one. And when you look for the sensor, make sure that it looks like this one. Okay, I tried to make some arrangement, anything that I could to make it work. Well, I did my best, but it still didn't work. The clearance between the ring and the sensor was, I guess, too much. And it was too much of a hassle to redo this self-made connection each time. So I ended up buying a new sensor, and hopefully this is correct. As you can see, once this pack is open, this product is non-returnable. As funny as it sounds, you can't basically check whether it's going to work on your car or not. But I have no choice. I just ordered this one, and at least this time it looks quite much similar to the one that I've removed from my car. So I hope this time it works, and let's see. Now, before you install the new sensor in place, make sure that you clean this surface here, because as it gets rusted, so as it builds up rust, it pushes the sensor into the magnetic ring and damages both the ring and the sensor. Okay, so let's start by connecting it to the car. You press it until it clicks, and then you also click it in place here. Yes. Okay, once this is in place, we connect the cables. So as you see, there are two dedicated slots here and here for these two parts of the cable, and in order for this to go smooth, it's always a good thing to grease the two parts there. The cable is rubber, and we will avoid any damage to the cable by doing so. We basically press it in place. One and the second one. Then you have this cable guides. And now we put the sensor in its slot. Now that new ABS sensor is in place, we can temporarily feed the brake disc in place and see how much clearance there is in between the sensor and magnetic ring. So let's have a look. Now let's push it all the way in, and you can see it's prox 1.5 millimeter in between the magnetic ring and ABS sensor, and that's what we should aim for. So the remaining problem is the position of the sensor in relation to this axis. What I mean is that if you have a surface that the sensor is bolted to, so that's how the bolt goes through, and the surface of the sensor, there's a gap in between these two surfaces, and that results in a little bit misalignment in between the sensor and the magnetic ring. And that's caused, the gap is caused by the design of the sensor, because this bolt here, it doesn't go through the hole, it goes through the threaded hole. So there's a thread on the plastic part here, and there's a thread in the material here, and that results in let's say difficulty of finding the perfect spot when it aligns 100%. So there's most probably one thread or two threads difference, and when I try to bolt this all the way through, I see that the plastic surface of the sensor is rising. I'll show you that now. When I bolt it, you see the surface is rising because it doesn't hit the exact spot on the other side. It most likely is caused by the rust or the fact that I needed to make new threads in this material because the previous bolt that I removed was completely rusted, and actually the head just tipped off while I tried to remove it. So I needed to drill it and thread it one more time. Okay, so what I see is that there's a little bit too much material here, and unfortunately I can align these two holes together. So I will need to cut off a bit of this material with a sharp knife and hopefully align the two bolts together. As I said, I needed to remake the threading in this hole, and therefore it might be a case only for me. But if you have the same case, well, we will see in a moment if this works. Okay, so as you see, I have removed a bit of the surface on top, and hopefully I'll be able to fit it correctly now. Okay, I think I hit the correct spot. Let's check with brake disc. Okay guys, I actually see the way out of this situation, and I'll try to do that because I believe that 0.5 millimeter is too little clearance and heat expansion will destroy the sensor eventually. And that is what I think happened to my old sensor that I have replaced as well. So I will need to remove the threads from this part, and then hopefully now the bolt is going easily through, and there is some space that I can use to adjust the sensor's position. In the perfect world, if I haven't been redoing the hole and threads in it in the material when I replaced the previous ABS sensor, I probably had the exact great spot to use, but I believe that 0.5 millimeter is not enough, and that heat expansion would destroy the sensor. So I will need to add a spring washer to prevent untightening of this bolt. So now if you see, I increased it to a decent millimeter or a bit above. Well, I would say a millimeter is what you can see here. And this is what I wanted. So now let's assemble everything back. Okay, so before we put the braking disc in place, I want to clean the ABS sensor, since I guess it's the best opportunity. Now, before we install the braking disc, we are going to put the copper paste on all of the components that we have removed, including bolts. And at the end we will put good amount of copper paste on this shaft. And now, nice and easy, you want to install your braking disc. I'm installing the old one, but if you install the new one, just follow the manual. Well, new technologies used in the braking disc, they usually don't require any polishing or chemicals to be used on them when you install them in the car. But just to be sure, check the manual of the braking disc manufacturer if you're installing a new one, whether it requires any kind of application of chemicals. If you are installing the old one, it's always a good practice to spray it with alcohol just to clean it, but we will do that later on. Now we are going to install the nut. Now, when it comes to the force that you need to apply to tighten this nut, I can't advise you because I've been looking for that information for over a year now and can't find it anywhere. Maybe you can advise me, just write in the comments and a lot of people will appreciate that. What I try to do is I try to tighten it to the point where the part on the nut that we needed to bend back to release the nut will mate with the same spot on the rod. And that's what I will try to do now. And I will also check what is the momentum. Now we are on 90 Newton meters. Set it on 120. Almost. Okay, we're on 120 now. 150. Almost. Okay, I guess 160. It's gonna do the trick, I hope. Yes, it's basically in the spot where it was when I removed it. And now we need to bend the nut back to prevent untightening. Okay. Now we install the support bracket. Before we do that, we clean the surfaces that are in contact with the surface on the other side. You can clearly see which ones are that. And while you do it, there's so much rust on it that I recommend that you use some mask for your face, not to breathe it into your lungs. Installation is the reverse of removal, so I'll just speed it up for you. Now you want to clean these surfaces on support bracket, since these surfaces will be mating with your brake pads. If you are reinstalling old braking pads, as I do, you can clean this surface here, since it is also mating with that surface. You can clean the top as well. This is where your piston from the braking assembly is acting. So, and of course with your new pads that should be no problem. Now if you're installing new braking pads, you will need to push in the piston there, because there won't be enough space for new thick brake pads. So now I don't have a proper tool for that. You can simply type it in on YouTube and see how the tool looks like. It's not really expensive, I just haven't had time to buy it. I didn't think in advance. But I have another tool that will work just fine. And this is what you need to do. You need to press on the piston to retract it and get the fluid back to the tank. And now if you have any troubles doing that, you can always use the bleed valve here, but in many cases I have replaced this braking system or braking assembly not far back, so it's pretty new, but for most of you this is going to be quite rusted, and this might be pretty difficult to remove and you don't want to break it. So be gentle with it. I'm gonna do fine with this. Okay. Now we put the metal plates in place. One on the bottom, one on the top. Oh. Okay. Now we put in one there, and I know it's there because of the stamp here, you see. With the new ones it's no different. And we put the front one here. Okay, and now we take the braking assembly and we fit it in place. You see, it went in much easier because we managed to push the piston back. Okay, and now we need to work on the bolts here to fasten it. Okay, now it's time to clean the braking disc. Remember to clean both surfaces, not only the one from the front. And if you clean only the one from the front, you obviously get only 50% of braking capability if the one on the back is covered in grease. Alright, and now guys, don't forget about the handbrake. You want to put it back in place and tighten it at the back passenger seat. Okay, so now check your handbrake wire that it's nice and tight. It can't get out of the assembly. And now put the cap in. You can use a hammer if this is not enough in your brand new car. In my brand new car it's enough. And we put the wheel on. Alright guys, now let's see the results. Okay. So far so good, but the real test is while driving. So remember, even if you have the light on, it doesn't necessarily mean that you haven't fixed the problem. You just need to drive and put at least like second gear and see what happens. So now let's have a look and let's try. Okay. We've got snow today, so maybe we'll be able to check if the ESP is working. Okay, there should be an error already. So let's check the ESP. I've got a perfect spot for that. Ah, fantastic. You see, we managed to fix it. And that's what I'm talking about. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like if you did, and if you'd like to see more Peugeot 307, check my channel out. I've got plenty of videos about this car, and good luck with your Peugeot.